What's up, you guys? Or should I say, what's up? Anyway, hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome back to the Televised Podcast. My name is Anna, and today we're going to be talking about Supergirl Season 6, Episode 5, titled Prom Night! Exclamation point. This is one of my beloved, highly anticipated, unbelievably excited for Midvale episodes. If you know anything about me, you know that I'm a Midvale warrior. I'm a Midvale enthusiast. Midvale is one of my favorite episodes from the entire series. The original Midvale episode from season 3 is one of my favorites from the entire series. And I think that the girls that they cast to be Alex and Kara are just like so perfect and so wonderful. That, like, I don't know, I'm a sucker for like teen shows and like teen characters and stuff, so really love to watch these episodes because it's just nice to see Kara and Alex when they were younger, see what their relationship was like, you know, and it's, I don't know, I just enjoy it. I enjoy the themes of these episodes, and especially like this one was so much fun to have Brainy and Nia come in, and we still got to see, I mean, you know, I think that they worked around Melissa's maternity leave like really, really well. I mean, they did what they could, you know, with what they had. I mean, they could have just like, unfortunately, like written Kara off in a different way, but I think that this way, especially with these two episodes where we get young Kara, we still get Kara. Like, she's still Kara and she's still in the show and she's still very much you know, front and center right now in these two episodes in her young, you know, even though she's a senior in high school, it's still Kara, and we still get to have those experiences with her, which I really appreciate. And it just, I don't know, I thought it was really smart to do that. Because like I said, they could have, you know, there was a million ways to kind of handle this, and I think that this was a really smart way to keep Kara very much present in the show, but not have to like either make up a bunch of time filming or just like write her off in a weird way, you know. It's hard to deal with that. And I mean, I've seen a lot of people say some shit like, oh my god, why didn't they just like push the season? When you order like, I don't know if you guys know how TV works, but when you order a series or like a new season of a show, the network will order it, they will put it in an order, and that needs to be fulfilled. The order needs to be fulfilled because they budgeted it for budget, you know, they put it in the budget for their certain season that they're filling, you know, for their certain fall or spring or whatever, like, schedule that they have put together, and they're counting on that season to be there for advertisers and things like that. So it's not something that they could just be like, well, she's pregnant, she needs maternity leave, so we're just gonna wait, because there's no waiting. It's not like that. I mean, sure, they did it for Supernatural, but that was so much, like, it was so very much specifically due to COVID. And just because that show went on for 14 years and they didn't want to just like have the worst ending to one of their, if not their most popular series that they've ever made, it was very different. And like for Supergirl, you just can't, and any other show, you just can't like, well, we're gonna put it off, we're just gonna stop it. Like, that's not how it works, especially cable. I mean, maybe they could do that on like streaming services or whatever, like push series and on different things like that, like HBO could do that, you know, stuff like that. But like network television cannot do that because that's just not how it works. So I think that they did a really good job with what they had, figuring it out. Anyway, that was a lot of rambling. No Batwoman this week. There was no Batwoman last Sunday. But if you're listening to this on Saturday, there will be a new episode of Batwoman tomorrow, and it is the first episode that we get Kate back, and I'm so excited. I think it is confirmed to be Wallace's first episode as Kate Kane. I'm so beyond excited for that. I cannot wait to see how the show, you know, does Kate Kane and how she's different and what that means for literally everything in the show. I'm really excited. I'm really, really, really excited to see what happens with that. But yeah, so that's kind of all I have to talk about. Let's just like jump right into it. So we pick up essentially right where the last episode left off, where they're pretty much talking about going to Midvale. Brainy finds this like newspaper clipping from one night in 2009, which Alex remembers as like a meteor shower, and Kara had to like, it was coming for Midvale, and so she flew up and like punched through it, but she like got hurt and busted through the gym ceiling, and no one noticed because it was under construction. And so it was the first time that Alex ever saw her bleed. It was her first encounter with kryptonite, because it was within that meteor was kryptonite, parts of Krypton. And so Brainy and Nia, they're like, okay, we got to go to the baseball field and we got to collect the DNA and we got to get out of there. And there's another plot that like is introduced where on that same newspaper is a little article called Luckiest Town in America, and it's what ends up bringing Kat to town, because basically Kara and Kenny, who isn't dead, thank you Crisis, they help solve these like cases in Midvale, and they basically go around. Alex calls them the like Scooby Gang, like their little mini like Scooby Gang, and that's what they do. They just go around and they solve mysteries and they fight crime and they save kittens from trees, and that's what they do together, Kara and Kenny, and they're together in this new timeline. They actually got to be in a relationship together. And they make the town virtually crime-free. So it's like Cat Grant is there to investigate and see exactly what is going on in this town to make it so lucky. And so they waste, you know what, honestly, I mean, they kind of like waste a lot of time on a lot of exposition that could have been avoided if they just hadn't changed shit in Crisis. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But Alex warns Brainy not to mess up their past, because she's like, this is my past and you better not, you know. She very much like RuPaul'd him, like, and don't it up. You know, very much like that. And then they're off in the Legion ship. And actually on the ship, Nia, they get in their disguises because they believe that they're bamfing into prom night, the night of prom. So they need to blend in. So Brainy's in a tux and Nia comes in this god-awful dress. And they discuss like 2009 stuff like chillax and Flossie and totes and what's up. And Nia brings up her mom and sister. And it's really sad. And I mean, obviously it's laying the groundwork for what I assume to be at least one episode this season where Nia reconciles with her sister, or at least gets to confront her sister or something, like they get to kind of like make amends potentially. That's what I felt in this episode, was that was setting that up for some kind of payoff down the line. I don't know. Most definitely in the second half of this season, which actually was just announced will be after episode 7 airs. So in 2 weeks, in 2 Tuesdays, Supergirl will go on a hiatus until August 24th is when they will pick back up for the summer. So that does mean that I will be not recapping Supergirl while it's not on, but I will keep recapping Batwoman until I'll go back to Batwoman only recaps until Batwoman's season is in fact over. But anyway, so Brainy continues to like stress eat, and they talk about how they can't mess up the timeline, again very much like harping on this idea of like we're time traveling, so don't fuck it up, you know. and they put on glasses to disguise themselves, which, you know what, I mean, I love that. Great. It's a great callback. It's a great, like, really like laugh, like self-aware joke that the show is making. It's a meta joke that the show is making, you know, to be like, it's the ultimate disguise, it's the ultimate optical illusion. But it's also really funny because Brainy straight up has an image inducer, like like he could just choose not to look, he could choose to look like anybody, but he's like, I'm gonna put on a pair of glasses. It's funny. Anyway, so in Midvale, Kara, Kenny, and Alex are hanging out in a diner, and Kara and Alex talk about their life and about what they're doing and about their futures and where they think they'll end up and what's been going on with them, because at this point Alex has been in college for 2 years, so her visits to Midvale seem to be a bit sparse. Kind of like that catching up moment with the two of them. So Kara asks Alex why she put off going to Europe, and Kara is like, well, I haven't told Kenny that I'm not going to Midvale College with him. I'm going to National City University. And Alex is like, well, why haven't you told him that? So they kind of, they have that tension that we kind of know is classic Alex and Kara tension between the two of them. So in the diner, Kara actually hears something crashing, and turns out it's the Legion ship, and Alex gives her a lecture about protecting everyone by keeping her secret, and how using her powers the way she does, like, puts everybody in danger. And Kara's like, come on, we just need to go, like, check out the ship. Kenny and I will make a run over there. It'll be really quick. And Alex is like, no, I'm going to drive you. So they all drive off to the Legion crash site, which actually ends up being the baseball field that they intended to go to, but were one day early to. So then we also see the first appearance of Cat Grant in, 3 years? She was in the season 2 finale, and then she wasn't ever in it again. I mean, she was in that one little video. Was that in season 3? Yeah, I think so, because she hasn't been seen since at least season 3, so it's been a long time. So Cat Grant comes in, and the actress, Eliza, does such an incredible job of being Cat Grant. I mean, you just watch her, and you're like, yes, that is Callista, like, that is Callista's cat, like, and she, like, I mean, she just, like, has the mannerisms down, she has the cadence down, like, the way her pattern of voice is so on point, and I think that's so cool, and it's just awesome that she was able to, like, capture her essence without, like, she wasn't trying to, like, she wasn't trying to be Callista. She wasn't trying to, like, replicate that. You could tell that she was just, like, being Cat how she is, like the kind of, like, stone cold but, like, flamboyant at the same time, like, regal Cat Grant that we all know and love, who, just, like, a little bit younger, a little bit less rich at the time. And it also, it was really cool because it doesn't come off as, like, a parody, because, I mean, whenever you have somebody come in to play, like, a younger version of this character that everybody knows and everybody loves, but it's not, like, young enough to be, like, a child, because, when you cast, like, a child version of a character, there's not much to be emulated. We're all different than how we are as children, but you have somebody like Cat Grant, who was this, like, older figure in season 1 and then season 2 sort of Supergirl, where she was older and we're only flashing back to her 20s. There's room for, like, okay, this might come off as, like, maybe a parody or a caricature in that way, just by like a lesser actor could get caught up doing that, but, like, she does it so well, and I was so impressed, and I was like, this is Cat Grant, like, oh my god, like, this is Cat Grant. So it turns out, like I said, Nia and Brainy actually arrived a day early, and a part of their ship is fully busted, so they have to fix that, and Brainy's like, we gotta get new costumes, because it's like a masquerade theme, and he didn't plan for a masquerade, so he's like, oh my god, first we have to fix the ship, and then we gotta get new costumes. He is such a joy in this episode, and I mean, I am the number one Brainy stan, and I have been for a long time, but he is such a joy in this episode. You could tell that Jesse was just having the best time in this episode. So Kara, Alex, and Kenny, they arrive at the baseball field where they landed, and Brainy and Nia are like, oh my god, we need to keep a low profile. Like, nobody can catch us. We just need to, like, stay low, stay cool. And immediately Kara, Kenny, and Alex walk up and they're like, hey! So the Nia and Brainy say that they're psychic aliens from the planet Psychon and say that they're named Brenda and Brandon. And they say that they were also fleeing a dying planet too, and they only have a day to fix their ship because otherwise all their family and friends and whoever else was fleeing is going to be too far gone for them to know where they went. And so they need their help. And Kara is like, I'm Kara Zor-El, I'm an alien too, like I'm an alien refugee, and it's just like so cute because it's Kara's open heart, extends to literally everybody, and Isabella just does such a phenomenal job. I mean, this whole entire podcast I could just rant and ramble about how perfectly Isabella and Olivia play these characters, but I won't. But she does such a good job of like capturing Kara, who is simultaneously hopeful and haunted, and truly just wants to help people not feel the same pain that she has felt. And that's what you see when she totally takes Brenda, Nia, under her wing and goes and takes her and takes her home with Alex, and Kenny ends up taking Brainy, to his house, because they split. They decide that they've got to do two different missions. So team Alex, Nia, Kara are trying to find this rock that they need to repair the part of their ship, and Brainy, Kevin are they need to find a way to fix the actual like container or whatever. Like they're both working on simultaneously different parts of the same part that is broken. But to hide their ship, they actually fold open the baseball field and just like sit it in there, and then they just close the turf back up. I'm like, okay, that's a neat trick. That's, you know what, I'm not gonna lie, that's a neat trick. Also, right before the commercial break, we see these blue guys, and they're talking about kidnapping a Kryptonian and how they tried to get Superman, but he was, quote, a lot. Which I think maybe is like the understatement of the century. But so they need a Kryptonian for their zoo. And like, okay, listen, at first when I saw these two, because we didn't have any inclination of any outside villain for these two episodes, but I absolutely love that we do have them, because these two guys are funny. And I love that they are literally straight out of like an early 2000s superhero movie. And that's one thing that I really loved about this episode, is that in the same way that like Wonder Woman 1984 was kind of like leaning into but also making fun of, and also, I mean, not making fun of, but like tongue-in-cheek, like poking fun at the 80s action superhero movie. That's what this episode kind of felt like, that like they were poking fun at the early 2000s kind of like superhero or like alien action movie, especially with these two guys who simultaneously look like Yondu from Guardians of the Galaxy, also like the people from Avatar. Also, I saw people say Smurfs. I mean, but they are, I like these guys. They feel straight out of Legends of Tomorrow, which is just really fun. So at Kenny's, Brainy loses his mind over 2009 technology, because he's like, this computer is all you got. It's all you got. Okay. And so he says that they need to like find a 3D printer, and Kenny's like, nobody has a 3D printer in their home. Like, what are you talking about? And so they need to create a 3D printer so they can fix the part from their spaceship, and they decide to sneak it to the school's STEM lab tomorrow to do so. As an owner of a 3D printer, this whole thing was kind of like, I don't know if that's necessarily how it works, but I can suspend disbelief. But anyway, so in the scene, there's a picture of Kara and Kenny on Kenny's desk, and I'm gonna come back to that, so keep that in mind. At the Danvers home, though, Nia is setting up in Kara and Alex's room, and Kara and Nia have this really wonderful, really sweet moment where they both bond over losing their mothers, and Kara talks about how she loves her Earth family, but it's not the same as being with people who really understand you, like, you know, Kryptonian people who truly know everything about you. And I love this moment, and I thought it was so interesting because obviously, like, and I mean, it's the same for Nia. We're watching Kara before she's met any of the Super Friends, before she's really forged a good relationship with Alex, because, I mean, from the interactions that we saw in this episode, their relationship, it's not great. They kind of butt heads the entire time, and so she doesn't really have this like strong connection to Alex. She doesn't have any of the friends that she makes along the way. I mean, James, Wynn, and then later, obviously, like Lena, Nia, Brainy, all of these Jean. I mean, you know, all of these people that she forms truly deep connections with on Earth, and finds meaning and purpose within those relationships, and finds fulfillment within those relationships. It's interesting to hear her say, you know, that she just doesn't feel like she belongs on Earth, and that she just wants to have somebody who understands her. And it's just really sad, you know? I mean, it's interesting, and it's to watch her before all of these years of character development is just really interesting, I think. And so Nia talks about how she doesn't know how to use her powers without her mom, and that it's hard to be so alone in her powers, and she says that she kind of relates to Kara in that way. And Nia, she actually gets an idea to call her mom. Since she's alive in 2009. So then the two of them actually show off a bit of their powers, though, and Alex bursts in, ruins all their fun. She fully is like, oh my god, you guys are not doing that tomorrow. Like, Alex is fully the mom sister. I mean, she's classic older sister. I'm the same way, but but she comes in, she tells him about Kenny and Brandon's plans, and says that tomorrow they're gonna sneak into Eliza's workplace using her ID and steal this like dysprosium, which is what they need. It's this geode. From there, and then they're done teaming up, and and then there's this really, really wonderful line where after Alex leaves, Kara says, quote, "Alex can be a control freak, but you get used to it." And Nia says, quote, "I'm sure I will." And it's just such a really sweet moment, because obviously, you know, Nia spent the last 2 years hanging out with Alex. And it's just, I don't know. I love all of these interactions so much. And she, actually, Nia, while she goes to sleep, she has a dream then that has this like Midvale High sign, as well as a pink panther in a cage that breaks out and leaps at her. Okay, hear me out. So my theory here is, is that, okay, in season 1, there was this big pink cat, like big pink panther statue in Catco. And I think that they're going to jimmy this storyline so that Kat's first ever big story, first ever big break that she gets, this like massive story that she's able to write, is about these two blue guys and their alien zoo and the pink cat, like the pink panther. And they're gonna make it so the reason that she had this pink cat statue in Catco in season 1 is because she wanted it as something to remember this journey to Midvale and her first story and her first big break and her first thing that set her up to create Catco in the first place. And I think that's really cool that they were able to like take, if that's the case, obviously we don't know 100% for sure, like if that's truly exactly what's happening, but I mean, I think it's pretty well confirmed, but not confirmed, but like it's pretty likely that will be what ends up happening. But I think that's pretty cool of the writers to, just like take this like prop that they decorated Catco with a couple of times, because it didn't even last that long. It was only in like a couple of season 1 episodes. To take that and then make it meaningful, make it impactful, especially on a new Earth where not much has that kind of meaning and impact. I thought that was really cool. So also in that scene, we see a framed picture of Eliza on Kara's bedside table and nothing with Kenny. And like I mentioned before, you remember how Kenny had Kara and him framed on his table. And so for me, this kind of establishes that like Kara doesn't care about Kenny as much as he cares about her, or at least not in the same way or to the same extent. So for me, it shows that like Kara will ultimately choose her life and her path over him very easily, and really just only feels bad about hurting his feelings. And I think that this whole thing is so similar to her situation with Mon-El, where it seems like whenever she's in a relationship with a man, she has to give up some part of herself. Like with Mon-El, she had to give up Kara Danvers to be with him. And so with Kenny, like the implication is that she's going to give up all of her dreams of going to National City University and just go to Midvale College and just solve crimes with Kenny and then get married and they stay in Midvale forever. And so it's just interesting that like both of these love interests have kind of like suppressed Kara in a way. Not necessarily out of malice. I mean, Mon-El certainly felt out of malice, but like Kenny, he doesn't mean it out of malice, like out of like, it's nothing to hurt Kara. He's not doing this because of that. He's just making assumptions based on things that Kara hasn't said, and but she ultimately still is feeling held back by his assumptions anyway. So I don't know, it's interesting, and now with Lena, we know that when Kara returns, Lena, she's not gonna make her give up anything. We've seen her reconcile the differences between Kara Danvers and Supergirl. We've seen her come to terms with that and love and appreciate Kara fully and wholly 100% in a way that Kara has never experienced before, and without having to sacrifice any part of herself. And I'm so excited for them to reunite, because it's just exactly what we need, is the two of them to come back together and realize that there is somebody for Kara who can love her fully and 100% without having to give up anything about herself, And it can't be said about somebody like William either, because again, he doesn't even know her secrets. So it's like we're doing that all over again too. And so like people were upset about Kenny being brought back, and they're like, oh my God, what if Kenny is her endgame? I'm like, you're ridiculous, first of all. Second of all, no. Third of all, if anything, they're just bringing Kenny back so that we can draw comparisons to maybe a potential relationship with Lena as the show finishes out and progresses. So I'm really excited to see how this plays out. But anyway though, at the high school, Kenny and Brainy actually hijack an inkjet printer and somehow jimmy it into a 3D printer. I mean, like I said earlier, I own a 3D printer, and I just don't think that logic totally works. But I mean, you know what? If somebody knows more about 3D printers and how they're actually made, then absolutely let me know. But I just don't think it's the same thing. I don't know. Anyway, if anyone could do it though, it would be Brainy, and he does. So he is told to just like stay put in the lab. But Kenny though, he talks about how Kara and him are staying local to get better at superheroing, and that he made them this base for their adventures. Like I said, he's making a lot of assumptions about, about his future with Kara. And he tells Brandon about Superman, and he actually says that Kara looks up to him, which I took from it as saying that Kara never even told Kenny that Clark is her cousin, like never really divulged beyond, well, I have powers, but that's about it, which is also really interesting. So Kenny says, quote, "When I'm with Kara, I feel like I can do anything. And actually, that online, a lot of people brought up that it was very similar to a quote from season 5 that Kara says after she tells Lena that she's Supergirl. She says, quote, "That's thanks to Lena. I feel 1,000 pounds lighter, like I can do anything." Definitely a pretty strong parallel there. Just like, I mean, like I was talking about earlier, where Lena inspires that kind of feelings, those kind of feelings within Kara, and that kind of freedom within Kara. And I think that's really cool. So then we see Kat again, and she's on the phone. She's mouthing off to Perry, who is her boss at the time. She's working at the Daily Planet. She's actually going by CJ Grant right now, but I refuse to call her anything but Kat. And so she says that she believes there's a super being in this town, and it's not just luck. And so she goes to Midvale College to investigate, where she runs into Kara, Alex, and Nia. And so she believes, so Alex has Eliza's like ID fully hanging from her neck. There's no picture, conveniently, because obviously Alex looks nothing like Eliza. But Kat believes that Alex is actually Eliza Danvers and interviews her about an incident that happened where this like column fell but was actually placed back magically. And Alex gets like super defensive and hands Eliza's key off to Kara and Nia, who actually go and find the geode. But Alex like shuts Kat down because she's in like protective mode, because Kat is answering questions that Alex does not want anyone to be asking, for Kara's safety and for everyone who knows her's safety. So Brainy, back at school, his thing is taking forever to print, and he's fully out of snacks. So he leaves the lab to go to the vending machine, but he gets caught by a teacher. And so it turns out that he was recruited by the Glee Club, the Mathletes, the Drama Guild, and the baseball team. And that's where Kenny finds him on the baseball field doing all of these crazy bat tricks. And it's like, oh my god, so much for keeping a low profile. And Brainy, okay, he says one of the funniest lines I've ever heard, just because of his delivery. He says, quote, "To avoid drawing unnecessary attention," or AMD attention. And that's just so funny. I don't know why. I thought that line was just so great. So Brainy actually finds out through this that there are so many ways that high schoolers deal with stress than to just stress eat. And it's just, I love watching him deal with his emotions and with what he's dealing with. I think that's such like a human thing, and I love that. I mean, Jesse recently said it in an interview for the show's like official account. He said that you'd think he would be like the, emotionless one, but really out of the whole entire Super Friends, he's got the most emotions, and he doesn't know how to deal with them because he's never had to. He had suppressors on for so long, and I think it's so interesting to watch him actually deal with these emotions. And it's really cool to see a man actually on screen deal with emotions in, yes, not healthy ways, but also not in ways that hurt other people. That's one thing that I really noticed and really appreciated about Brainy in this episode, is that even though at times he kind of like, not necessarily lashed out, but he got a little bit, he raised his voice a little bit with Nia at some points during this episode, but it wasn't in a way that like hurt her. He wasn't trying to hurt her. He was just extremely overwhelmed and stressed to the point where he kind of was like hitting a boiling point, and that's one thing that I like I said, I really appreciated that, because he was able to be stressed out and also kind of frustrated and kind of angry, but not harm the people around him while that's happening. He is just kind of like trying to deal with his emotions and have this coping situation happen without hurting the people around him. And I think that's such an admirable portrayal of a man dealing with his emotions throughout this episode that I just really loved. Back at the college, though, Nia and Kara find the gemstone, and the geode, and Nia uses her dream powers to pick the lock, and I'm like sitting there, girlies, did you look for cameras? Because you are there, and they are picking the lock, and they've got their whole faces out. was like, girlies, did you check for cameras? Like, oh my God. Anyway, though, so on the way back from the college, in the car, Alex, Nia, and Kara actually almost get hit by a gas truck, which is being controlled by those blue guys. And it's their whole big plan to draw Kara out. And it succeeds because she flies out of the car to stop this van that's gonna, if it crashes, it'll blow up, and it'll hurt people. And along the way, it actually almost crashes into Kat and takes her out. But she captures pictures on her 2009 BlackBerry. And also, Kara has one of my favorite moments, probably ever, when she she tries to stop the truck because she flies into the driver's seat, and she goes to put her foot down on the brake, and her foot goes through the bottom of the cab, like the floor of the cab, and she says the brakes don't work. It's so good. It's so good. And so Nia and Kara, they manage to stop the truck. Kara uses freeze breath to freeze the wheels, and then Brainy shows up because Alex called him, and he foils the plot to steal. Actually, they were trying to steal both Kara and Nia because they're kind of scared of Kaluans, the blue guys, I mean. And Nia actually has another dream right there about the Pink Panther, and Brainy actually was like scanning the sky to find their ship, and he forces the avatars to retreat. And Kat was chasing them the whole time, but they managed to just get away before she can do anything. And so Nia, after this, is so frustrated because she just can't figure out her dream's meaning, and she impulsively calls her mother, but she doesn't answer. And she gets to hear her voicemail, which is just so heartbreaking, but it's, I mean, obviously it's a good thing that her mom didn't pick up, because obviously the space-time continuum, like, we don't need to deal with the collapsing of the space-time continuum, but it's also kind of funny because Nia's like, what does it symbolize? But it's very literal. There literally is going to be a Pink Panther, and she's gonna see it. But anyway, so back at the Danvers home, though, Alex threatens to tell Eliza everything that's happened, but Kara says, she's like, I can fix it, please don't tell. And she's like, please don't tell Mom, and Alex starts yelling at Kara, and I know I said that I wouldn't spend this whole entire episode waxing poetic about these two girls, but Olivia Nikayan does such an incredible performance in this moment. When I was watching it, I was so struck by even just the way that she said her line and like the pattern of speaking that she had, because I paused it and I was like, I could hear that in Kyler's voice. Like if I played it back in my mind and just put Kyler's voice saying those words, it sounded exactly like what Olivia did. You know what I mean? Like, she just is able to capture her cadence and her essence and the patterns and the way that she talks and the emphasis that she puts on certain words or certain parts of her sentence. And that is so cool. And she's just so good. It's just so Alex. And I just love this casting. So then future Pulitzer Prize winner Kara then says, who even reads the newspaper anymore? And Alex tells Kara that the real world isn't about playing hero, but about making real sacrifices for those you care about and not for yourself. And it's interesting because that is a sentiment that Kara obviously carries for the rest of the series. I mean, we see her be so self-sacrificing. She sacrifices herself every finale. Every single finale, she is prepared to die, and for the greater good. And it's interesting that we have this moment where Alex says that to her for the first time, and obviously it sticks, which I thought was really cool. And so Alex says that she didn't go to Europe because Eliza was worried about Kara not having Alex around. And Kara says, a sick burn. I've seen more solar systems than you have dates. Yikes. But Alex burns right back and says, hey, why haven't you told Kenny? If you're so grown up, then why haven't you told Kenny that you're not going to Midvale College with him? And Kara actually walks out the door and is like, I'm fine. You know what? I'm going to show you how mature I am. I'm going to go tell Kenny right now. And it's just such an interesting moment for the two of them because, obviously we've seen them go through so much on the show together. And I think it's interesting to watch them be siblings. Not that the Danvers sisters are not a realistic portrayal of siblings, because they are to a certain extent. But I think that especially when you're younger and you have those fights with your sister that just like go crazy and you just go after each other, that is so real. And I don't know, I like that. I like to see them in this state because it brings certain things out of both characters that I think are really interesting. So Nia and Brainy actually discover that this guy named Naxum Torque is their guy. He's the blue guy with the braids, not the other guy, but the one with the braid on the side of his head. And while they're looking at his profile and the record of his capture, the past changes right in front of their eyes. And now he's actually still on the loose. Ooh, yikes. And they freak out about changing everything. Oh no. And it's like, guys, that was your one mission. That was your one job. You can't change the past. It's not like the legends have their entire lives dedicated to fixing that or anything. Anyway, though, so Kat hangs out around a bar and has a conversation with a bartender who was this extra that was, or I guess not extra, that's kind of mean, but he was actually this guy. This was the guy that was like teasing people, that he was like Kara and Monel's like love child on Instagram, that he was like egging on like the fans that were just like going after him. And he was just a bartender that had a conversation with Kat. Oh my god. Anyway, so he calls her Lois Lane. He disrespects her. And she's looking at the pictures she took and sees a little shadow of a spaceship on the ground. And you know what? The quality is immaculate for that 2009 BlackBerry. And she buys a drone off of this kid for $20. And you know what? In 2009, that's a steal. I think that's still a steal today. Like, my God. Anyway, though, Kara has this talk with Kenny, but before she can tell him that she's going to NCU, he shows her their little lair, which is full of fairy lights, and it's just really sweet. Back on the ship, though, Brainy is stress spinning in his chair because he physically cannot deal with changing the timeline. And Nia says that Alex hasn't been able to get a hold of Kara, and Nia lets it slip that she called her mom, and Brainy immediately starts trying every coping mechanism that he learned during the school day, and he asks Nia for help. And that's when Nia does something that I do every single day. She breaks into an a cappella rendition of 9 to 5 by Dolly Parton. And it was a really wonderful performance. Such a good job by Nicole. Such a sweet, sweet moment between Nia and Brainy. And when Nia is like singing to him, Brainy literally looks at her like she hung the stars in the sky. It's definitely the sweetest moment. And but while they're singing, they get a ping on Naxum Torque in the Midvale woods, and they head out there. And I just want to point this out. I don't know if this is going to happen. I don't necessarily want it to happen, but the Midvale woods, which is where Kara and Kenny met, and then went on their it was where Kara and Kenny met up to look at the stars, and that's where they had their last night together before he died on Earth 1, and also where they found Kenny's body in the original Midvale episode. And someone mentioned on Twitter the concept of fixed moments, which are things that have to happen no matter the reality, no matter the timeline, because they changed so much that it's imperative that this single moment happens. And really, Kenny's death could be a fixed moment because like where it had happened, because it was what brought Kara and Alex together, which ultimately is what caused Kara to become Supergirl in the first place by saving Alex's plane. Because if Kara and Alex never had that connection that they did, I mean, who knows if Kara would have been paying close enough attention to even know what flight Alex was on, you know what I mean? And so I don't want Kenny to die, but it's kind of seeming like it might have to happen, or, you know, something bad will happen to Kenny. I don't know. There's just so much like domino effect that could happen from Kenny's death not happening. You know what I mean? So, I just feel like it's coming. But anyway, so in their new lair, Kara and Kenny are having a little talk, and he made a bench out of that log where they had their first kiss. And he says that this barn is their future, and we kind of leave their moment hanging with Kara beginning to kind of like work up the courage to tell him that they're not going to have the future that he thinks that they will. And then in the woods, Brainy apologizes to Nia for his lashing out and misunderstanding. And like I said earlier, I love that they took the time to like show that, because it just shows how wonderful Brainy is, and shows, you know, a man dealing with his emotions in a really positive way, or at least in a way that doesn't, like, I mean, you know, in a way that didn't hurt the people around him, and he's conscious of the feelings of the people around him. And Nia forgives him right away. And then they get put into a bubble, and they get captured by Maxim Torque. And then that's where the episode ends. Oh my god. Epic cliffhanger. I'm so excited for next week. Next week also is Kyler's directorial debut. Kyler Lee, she's going to be directing, or she already directed, and it's going to be the directorial debut for Kyler in her episode. I'm so excited to see exactly what happens in this episode. I'm really excited for it. I mean, I kind of have a lot of theories bubbling up about this one. This episode is pretty easy to kind of like theorize on, because it's a two-parter, so like everything is very much connected. So like they're setting up all of the story points in this original episode, and obviously we're going to get the payoff in the next episode. So it's a bit easy to kind of like pick up what they're putting down. But like I said, I don't know, I have certain feelings about certain things that are going to happen in this episode, and I'm really excited to see exactly what's going to happen, because, you know, with Kat there, and with Kara and Kenny, what's going to happen with them? You know, how about Alex? Like, what about that? And what about this Maxim Torque guy? I mean, are they even going to know that they captured Brendan and Brenda? Wait. Brandon and Brenda. Are they going to know that Brandon and Brenda got captured? You know, how are they going to find out? How are they going to find them? They don't have the technology that the DEO had, or, you know, which is what Brainy was using, or they don't have even any of like the handheld stuff. I mean, I guess they could go to the Legion ship and find it, but it's going to be interesting. I'm really excited to see exactly what happens. I really love this episode. It was so goofy. I didn't stop smiling the whole time that I was watching it. I just really, really loved it. I think, I've said it a million times before, but I love when the show leans into the more goofy, campy aspects of some of their character interactions and some of the things and villains that they have, especially. So I really, really enjoyed this episode. And you can let me know what you think in the comments below. Please tell me what you think. You could tweet me at televisedpod. Again, let me know exactly what you thought about this episode, because I loved it. I hope you enjoyed this episode of my podcast. You can subscribe, you can rate, share, like, do all the things. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.